My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is a movie that isn't just getting good reviews, it's not just getting great reviews, it's getting amazing reviews across the board. I've seen so many people call it a masterpiece. Many are claiming it to be one of the best movies they've ever seen. People going absolute nuts for this movie. Critics, filmmakers, just everyone. So I was just like, I have to see this movie. Now, the directors of this movie directed another movie called Swiss Army Man that came out back in 2016, and it's a fine movie. I liked it more when I first saw it, but it didn't stay with me at all. I thought Daniel Radcliffe was really good in that movie, and I get what it was going for, but I just don't think the execution of those ideas was good at all. But despite all that, I was still very excited for this movie just based on what I've heard about it. And after watching this movie, I have to say that this is one of the most overrated movies I've ever seen in my life. And that is my honest opinion. I'm not a contrarian for the sake of it. I'm not trying to be different. Every opinion I say on this channel is my real honest opinion. And that's the case with this movie. I did not like it at all. Now, I will say that the technical aspects of this movie are really good. The cinematography, some of the editing is straight out phenomenal, and there's a ton of it in this movie. The sound is really good, and all the performances are decent. I thought Michelle Yeoh, Stephanie Hsu, and Ki-Hoo Kwan and James Hong were all really fine in this movie. I don't think anyone's amazing in it, but they all do a good job with the material they're given to work with. And I will say that the two directors behind this movie, both named Daniel, clearly made the movie that they wanted to make. This is 100% their vision. So kudos to them. They even put out this note today just talking about the amount of love and care that went into this movie, and it kind of makes me feel bad for not liking it, but I still thought putting that out there was a nice touch. And I always complain about the lack of original and ambitious movies nowadays, and this movie is certainly that. If you want to see this movie, then go out and give it a try just based on the fact that it's original and it's ambitious and it is unlike anything else you've seen. I will give the movie credit where it deserves. But I don't think it's executed properly at all. It kind of reminds me of this movie that came out, I think, in 2012 called Detention, directed by Joseph Kahn. It's a movie with a lot of ideas. It's very ambitious. It starts off as a high school comedy, and then it goes into like serial killer movie and time traveling and just all these different wild directions. And by the end of this movie, I'm just like, what is this movie even about? It's just a complete mess. And that's what I felt about this movie. I know what this movie is about. I know everything that's trying to say about how overwhelming life is, about how we always wonder what our lives would be like if we made different choices. It's about generational trauma. I get everything that it's going for, but it didn't have any sort of impact with me. But those are just the themes of the story. The actual plot of this movie, I thought was unbelievably messy and completely unclear. Like, it starts off, I thought the first scene was good. It gets you a sense of just how overwhelming this woman's life is. And just, it's so loud and just all over the place. And you can just feel the chaotic nature of it. And then they go to this IRS building. And then all of a sudden she's traveling through multiverses and fighting people. And it just like, what just happened? Like, if you watch a movie like The Matrix, at least there's a clear point. Well, Neo gets taken to Morpheus and he tells him what's going on. And they kind of do that with this movie, but no matter how many times they explain it, it doesn't make any more sense. It's just a very weak foundation for this movie to bounce off, and foundation is everything. If you don't have a strong enough foundation, the movie is doomed to fall apart later, just like anything else without a foundation. So instead of enjoying the movie, I'm just like, why is this happening? And why is this happening? And why is this happening? It just felt like a series of events without a cohesive structure to it. You know, I mention this writing advice all the time, but some of my favorite writing advice ever came from the two South Park guys when they said that whenever they're writing a script out, instead of using and then this happens and then this happens, They say, therefore this happens, therefore this happens, creating a chain of cause and effect. And that's how it should be done. That's how the best stories are written. In this movie, it just felt like a constant, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Why? Because we're trying to make the craziest, most wildest movie ever, so we're just gonna go all out there with it, and it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier, and it's just too much. It's far too much. I get what they're trying to do, but everything that they're trying to say and accomplish is just buried under artificial nonsense. It's like if someone gave me a beautifully cooked whale steak, and then on top of that steak, they put a thing of pizzas on top, and then they put chicken wings on top of the pizza, and then they put fries on top of that, and then they put an ice cream sundae on top of that, and it's, a lot of things that I enjoy on their own, but at the eventual point it just becomes too much to the point where the steak is just completely gone. And that's this movie. The story, the characters, the themes, they all get lost in just the amount of everything going on. And I guess I gotta give the movie props, because at least they tell you that in the title. I mean, it's literally called Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that's exactly what it feels like. But it's far too much. I'm gonna compare this movie to one of my favorite movies ever made, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That movie is a masterpiece. It's weird, it's different, and it's definitely out there in moments, but even in those moments, you're still reminded of the heart and soul of the story. You still feel the emotional weight of everything going on. While in this movie, I felt like this movie just collapsed under its own weight, and everything and all the emotions it was trying to make you feel get buried underneath just everything that's so in your face. I will also say that I found this movie to be very one note, which sounds like a contradiction based on everything I've said, but everything that this movie is trying to do and say, I feel like it did a good enough job within the first half of this movie of making it clear, but they keep repeating it time and time again, and at a certain point it just feels so repetitive. And it's way too long of a movie. Like, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think. Like, it's a long one, and I don't think it needed to be. Like, hour and a half would have been just fine. There's a point near the end of the movie where it says part 3, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, we better not just be 2/3 into this movie. And thankfully we won't, but I was really worried there for a second. I also think this movie has no momentum. It's not building towards everything. They gave you too much too soon, so the movie has nowhere to really go from that point forward. Like, for a movie to work in the best possible way, you want some sort of progression. I like it when a movie is crazy and out there, but if you do that throughout the entire movie, at an eventual point, you just become numb to it. If you build and then you just deliver with this crazy bonkers finale, that would be the best direction. Like, if you look at a movie like Malignant, which I absolutely love, that movie is just so campy and weird throughout, but it just builds to this ridiculous, amazing finale. And it just works on that level. Same with a movie like Society. If you haven't seen Society, I would say I recommend it, but look into it if you watch it based on my recommendation. That's all I'll say. But that is a weird movie. That is a really something movie. But all the gross and weird elements of that movie are only present in the last 20 minutes. If they were present throughout the entire movie, it would just be a nothing movie. It would just be weird and gross for the sake of it, instead of building towards something. You need that, and this movie didn't have that to me. And this movie also has a lot of moments where you can just tell that they think this is some of the most heartfelt, emotional moments ever, and it just feels like the directors are yelling at the audience to cry. Cry, goddammit, cry! It's like that scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which I love that movie, when, it looks like all hope is lost, Krill's looking at his friends who are about to die, and he has all these memories of them, and then that powers him to get through the difficulties. And this movie feels like that scene like 10 different times. I also found the multiverse angle of this movie to be beyond underwhelming. I get what it's trying to do, what it's trying to say, but when you have this plot and she's going through all these different universes, I just don't feel like we spent enough time in any of them. Like, we might see them for a few brief moments, and then she gets taken over by a different version of her, but it doesn't feel like another version of her. It feels like she's in the Matrix and they just told her how to do Kung Fu. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like a version of her who knows Kung Fu took over this body. Because we don't spend any time with the other versions of herself, just these brief, quick moments. So that doesn't work. I also found lots of the humor to be very immature. Now, I can't fault the movie all too much for that, because this is directed by the same guys who made Swiss Army Man, a movie about a farting corpse. So, I can't blame the movie too much for that. I should have gone in knowing the humor would be immature, but there are just a few moments in this movie where I'm just like, really? Like, she's killing people with dildos? Okay, they're trying to get powers by doing this to themselves? Really? The audience I was with was dying of laughter, but I was certainly not. There are a few moments that made me laugh, but I also feel like they overdid these moments. Like, one of my favorite Pixar movies is Ratatouille, and they reference that movie quite a bit in this one, and it made for one really hilarious moment. But it wasn't just one moment, they kept going back to it time and time again, and I'm just like, okay, it was funny the first time, but now you're overdoing it. There's also another moment with walks, and I thought it was a really funny moment, but then we go back to it later, and I'm just like, I don't think we needed that. So even some of the jokes that did land for me, I do think overstayed their welcome. And the action in this movie, I didn't find to be all that good. In fact, I know it's a tactic that lots of filmmakers use, where someone will slowly punch someone, and then they just speed it up in post. But the action in this movie looked like it was fast forward. And it could have been an intentional directing decision. I wouldn't be surprised, but just the way it looked and the action scenes flowed, it didn't work for me at all. Look, I really didn't like this movie. It is getting amazing reviews. People are calling it one of the best movies ever made, and I will not be saying that. I will probably never watch this movie again. That said, it's ambitious, it's original, and it's unlike anything else, so I do appreciate that about this movie. But I can't just say, oh, it's different, therefore it's good. If someone made a movie about someone pooping off a cliff for 2 hours, I'd be like, well, I have never seen anything like it, but I still don't like it. And that's the case with this movie. That said, there is a lot of artistry that went into it. It is a well made for what the directors intended. There are some great technical aspects to this movie, but the way they approach these themes and these characters and the story just didn't work for me in any way. I didn't find it funny. I found it to be very messy. I found the pacing and the structure of this movie to be completely off. It's way too long. I have a ton of issues with it, and it just isn't for me. Lots of people love it. So if it sounds like you might like it, then give it a shot, but not for me. So I'm going to go ahead and give Everything Everywhere All at Once a 3.5 out of 10. It kind of reminds me of that movie that came out last year, Annette. Lots of people love that movie, and I even said it's unlike anything else I've seen. There is a clear vision on display, but that vision didn't work for me, and that's the case with this movie. I wish I loved it as much as everyone else, but I honestly did not. But what did you think of Everything Everywhere All at Once? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.